Hello, my name is Harriet Tinka, and I'm the director of the Canadian Multicultural Education Foundation, or as we call ourselves, CMEF. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are located on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of First Nations and Métis. Edmonton is and has been home to diverse Indigenous nations and peoples, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Soti, Anishinaabe, Tutina, Inuit, and many others. They have called these nations home since time immemorial. As a multicultural organization, CMEF acknowledges the Treaty 6 land and territories of our First Nations. This is a reminder to us to continue learning about Indigenous communities, as well as create meaningful relationships with them and promoting recognition of their history, languages, and traditions. This is our commitment to action. The Canadian Multicultural Education Foundation is a not-for-profit organization founded in Edmonton, Alberta on October 1st, 1990. Our mandate is to strengthen the multicultural fabric of Canada through educational and community programs. I am so proud to say that CMEF has steadfastly developed and offered innovative programs in response to emerging needs and realities. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the New Horizon Seniors Project, featuring videos developed and produced collaboratively during the COVID-19 pandemic by an intergenerational and multicultural team of seniors and youth for seniors and youth. This project has been made possible by the support of the Government of Canada's New Horizon for the Seniors Project. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us here today. For this video, we will be focusing on the topic of aging well with healthy diets and exercises. Today's video will be hosted by my teammate and I. My name is Krista Liu, and my teammate is named Earl Cholden. We have invited Lisa Workman, who is an exercise specialist with the Primary Care Network, to join us here today. Lisa, could you please give us a short introduction of yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Crystal. Yes, my name is Lisa. I am accredited as a clinical exercise physiologist, and I'm a professional kinesiologist. And basically what that means is I help people move their bodies better. And I help people with their exercise and physical activity in regards to health and longevity, and even with people with chronic disease. That's actually a lot of the people that I work with are people that have chronic diseases. And we just know the health benefit of being physically active in relationship to their chronic diseases. So yes, so that is me in a nutshell.
How did you get interested in this, Lisa?
Yeah, so I come from a fairly physically active background. I started riding a bike when I was 3, so I'm a bit of a busybody myself. I did competitive synchronized swimming as well as competitive water polo. And when I got to university, all I wanted to do was learn about the human body and how it moved. And so I was able to complete my undergraduate degree at the University of Alberta. And then I subsequently completed a master's degree as well in kinesiology. So I have this passion and drive to let people feel the benefits of being physically active and have very positive experiences with it, as many people maybe don't. And so I want to help people find their thing and hopefully feel better in their bodies.
I love how you sound so passionate about it.
It's true. It's not fake.
So what kind of exercise do you recommend for seniors?
Yeah, so it's a really broad spectrum for what seniors could do. The population are not all in the same. So you have to keep in consideration individual factors for sure. So some people who maybe aren't feeling very confident on their feet might benefit from being in the water where you're really quite supported. It's a little less impact for the body. It might be something to feel a bit more safe. Whereas others may, not have time. They're busy caring for maybe a partner or a spouse. Maybe they're helping out with childcare with their family, with their grandchildren. So maybe walking makes the most sense, and they feel that they can, pick up an indoor walking routine in the winter and head outside during the spring, summer. So it's a huge variety of choices of physical activity and exercise that seniors could choose from, but it is very independent and independent on the individual. But we do recommend cardiovascular exercise, which means that it's your heart and lungs are operating at a bit of a higher level. So you have an increase in breathing rate, an increase of heart rate, which is very important for many different reasons. We also would encourage people to do some form of resistance training, which is putting some sort of force on the muscles to keep them strong, and also the bones. It makes a difference for your bone health as well. And then we also suggest some form of flexibility. I think most of us all could use a little bit more flexibility, but in an older adult population, keeping those joints moving and healthy are so important for just even day-to-day activities that require us. So things like washing our hair, we need to have a certain level of flexibility in those shoulders to do it. And then finally, probably some form of balance training would be essential for the older adult population, simply because our balance shifts and changes. Our ability to respond to stimulus sometimes slows down as we age. So we need to kind of keep our handle on that, and the ability to respond to the environment we're in requires some balance. So definitely balance would be kind of the fourth variable to consider.
Wait, you said four. There's cardiovascular,
Yeah.
there's
Muscular strength and endurance would be kind of, I'd say, one together. Flexibility.
And balance.
And then balance, yeah.
So what about for people who have limited mobility?
Yeah, that's a good question, Earl. Yeah, so for people that are maybe ones that have to stay seated, there is a whole host of exercises that you could do in a seated position. One of my favorite pieces of equipment for people would be a tabletop arm bike. And so what that allows you to do is actually pedal with your arms. It is also kind of flexible in a point that you could put it on the ground and also pedal with your legs. But I really like the tabletop option, because a lot of people who are not very mobile have some sort of issue maybe going on the knee, the hip, the ankle. And so if we can get some cardiovascular exercise via the arms, that would be super beneficial. Other places where people have low mobility, the pool is, again, another great environment where people find that they just can move their bodies so much better in the water. So that would be another place for people that potentially would need some form of support. And I'm all about using walkers and canes and Nordic walking poles and any sort of supportive aid that's going to help someone, even to the point of, I know I have patients who use the shopping cart. They'll go walk the perimeter of Costco with the shopping cart because they know that having that shopping cart is so supportive for them that they can walk much longer distances with that shopping cart. So yeah, those would be kind of my go-tos.
My mother was too proud to have a walker, but she would go shopping with us and could do the supermarket very nicely with the shopping cart.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've heard many, many people having that success.
So if people want to join the program, how do they pick the right program?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it does take a little thought, right? It's not as simple as going and picking any program out there. So what I encourage people to do is if they are able to ask the organization or the program for them to come and watch for a session or two. So particularly with, this is just aquatic exercise, usually, you know, your facilities have a viewing area. So I encourage people to take the time to go see the class and watch it first before actually, you know, committing to something so you can see what it requires. And I find water exercise can sometimes be intimidating for people who don't feel super comfortable in the water. So then if they can see, well, actually, I'm only going to be like up to my chest height, I'm going to be safe. I could situate myself by the wall. They get to see the instructor. They can see the energy of the instructor. It could give you a lot of information before diving into a program. And with that being said, these programs, I would hope would be quite welcoming to you to even just try a program for one day. So some form of a drop-in option is a nice way to sort of kind of dip your toe into the water to see if it is suitable for you. The other thing about a program is, you know, going and approaching the instructor at some junction. So maybe showing up, you know, an extra 10 minutes early, catching that instructor and saying, look, I'm new here today. What do I need to know about this class? They may very well have set up that there is a participant in the class or program already whose job it is to welcome and get you kind of comfortable, find you the equipment you need, let you know where the water fountain is, where the bathroom is, all these sorts of important housekeeping items. Maybe they have someone that can help you with that, or the instructor themselves can help you. So I'd encourage you to approach any of the instructors. They are trained to teach you appropriately, but they're also there to support you in what you need. So if they can't support you, they will tell you, and maybe then they have another idea or another class or another program that they can suggest for you. So there is a certain level of homework that you would want to do when joining a program, but those would probably be a couple things that I would suggest for you to do.
What about exercising on my own at home? Is that safe?
Yeah, that's a great question. The one tool that I like to suggest people use is called a rating of perceived exertion. And it sounds fancier than it really is. It's just a 0 to 10 point scale of exertion. So 0 would be, I'm sleeping in bed, I have no exertion. And 10 is the most exertion I've ever done in my life. So imagine chasing your school bus in 10 feet of snow being chased by a bear, right? Like that is all out exertion, be 10 out of 10. So if you apply that scale to yourself, 0 to 10, and as you're moving in your home, you're sort of finding that you're in, you know, a really high exertion, then maybe it isn't necessarily safe for you to be doing that at home. You might want to have a supervised scenario. If you have lots of chronic health conditions, again, that's another scenario where maybe exerting yourself might get kind of too high at home. However, if you're someone that has, you know, been having their annual physical and are healthy and you are exerting yourself at home, but it's maybe only a 5 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10, then you're definitely safe to be doing this at home. There's no signs of dizziness, lightheadedness, shortness of breath, none of those sort of things showing up. Then it's absolutely safe for you to be at home. You don't need to be supervised. And if you're ever not sure, broach the topic with your family physician or any healthcare provider, and they can also kind of give you some hints and tricks of things if they think, you know, if any red flags come up in the conversation, they'll then direct you to someone like myself who does supervised exercise programs.
So you mentioned just now that there was something called a tabletop bicycle or tabletop pedal.
Yeah.
Is there any exercises that seniors can do without equipment or? Yeah.
Oh, tons of exercises. Yeah, definitely. You could look at If we're looking at resistance training, there are body weight exercises that you could do, that putting your body in specific positions would add a certain level of force to the muscle and the bone. So definitely body weight exercises are fine. I've already referenced walking. It is relatively simple, but not easy to get out on a walk sometimes. But from an equipment perspective, you could have your shoes on and dress appropriately to the weather, and wouldn't require anything else other than maybe taking your cell phone with you. So there are lots of options of things to do at home. I know we've even suggested, if you take a 4-liter jug of milk, that weighs 8 pounds. So maybe you're not ready to lift 8 pounds, but maybe you're ready to lift 2 pounds. So you fill that milk jug up a quarter of the way with some sand or water. You've made yourself your own homemade hand weight. And I love those milk jugs because they have good handles. You want to have a good handle to hold on to. So you can make up equipment at home if you need to. There's no reason that you would have to go out and buy anything special.
So how often, you gave me the 4 things I have to cover. How often
Yes.
do I need to exercise?
Yes, that's a great question, Earl, because that is almost like the number one question people ask me, right? How much do I really have to do? So in terms of our Canadian physical activity guidelines, so we have evidence-based guidelines, primarily research coming out of Canada, that we want to accumulate 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. And so when I say that, people are like, well, what does that mean? What does 150 minutes actually look like? So if you wanted to slice and dice that up into 5 30-minute sessions, that would be, great. There you would get your 150 minutes. Now, we know that we still get health benefits with as little as 10 minutes or less. So even if you're someone who doesn't have, very great mobility, and all you have the endurance is to maybe walk for 8 minutes, then how do you get all those 8 minutes in? Well, maybe let's round it up to 10 minutes. That'd be 15 10-minute maybe walks in the week. So from a frequency perspective, it could be, as much as 5 times a week. You could do it even less if you had more endurance. It really kind of fluctuates based on that total volume of 150 minutes a week. So you have to get a little creative sometimes with how it works, but between 2 and 5 times a week might be my answer, Earl. And maybe I'll even say once a week, because some people have to start somewhere, and 1 time a week for 20 minutes is maybe all that they can do to start with. So I know I danced around that question, but if you can think of 150 minutes per week, how are you going to fit that in? It might look different for every other senior.
How do we prevent injuries?
Yes, yeah. So Crystal, that is a common question. No one ever wants to get injured. Really, truly, what the evidence tells us is that a good warm-up is going to help prevent injury. And when we mean warm-up, we mean dynamic. So probably a decade or 2 ago, we would see lots of people standing and stretching before they exercised, when in fact, that's really not a dynamic enough movement. They're too static. So we want people to do activities that'll get the heart rate going, getting our breathing rate up, bringing our core body temperature up, so that we're actually preparing ourselves for movement. So what I usually tell people is, sometimes the simplest way would be just to walk around your house. Find yourself a circuit. You could walk from your kitchen to your bathroom to your bedroom and back around again. If you're safe and able to go outside, if the sidewalks are good and clean and dry, maybe walking 2.5 minutes away from your house and 2.5 minutes back. So we want, between a 5 and 8 minute warm up of some sort of dynamic movement to get your body ready for your exercise. And that'll really help limit injuries from occurring.
What about for older adults, over 80? Any special advice for us?
Oh, that's a good thought. Really, it's It really depends. I have seen some very active 80-year-olds or 80-plussers who can do something that a 55-year-old can do. So I would say if you haven't been physically active, it's never too late. It's never too late. So if you're thinking, you're watching this and you're going, I'm 84 and I haven't done anything, it's not the time to give up on this. Exercise can be included anytime in your life. And actually, you're probably going to be the one that sees the best bang for their buck, because there's a huge benefit from going from nothing to something. There's a huge curve that you can really get really big benefits from. So if we're in that position where you haven't been doing anything and you're in your later years, please understand that doing something now would still be super beneficial, probably for the quality of your life, for longevity, for zest and energy in your life. All of those things would be really important. And then for those who are in their 80s and are physically active, there's no reason to slow down. If you are running into barriers such as health conditions or changes in your health status, then yes, of course, that needs to be readdressed and checked with your primary care physician. But in general, like, there's no reason. Age should not be something that causes you to do less. You should continue to do everything that you've been doing for as long as you can.
Thank you very much. This has been great. I've had wonderful experience personally with primary care at work, and I'm sure many other seniors in Alberta have as well. Thanks for your time and all the information.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're here with Divya Sharma. Divya is a registered dietitian with the Southside Primary Care Network. Donna Coombs-Montrose and I, Earl Cholden, will interview Divya for this series of videos. Donna, you want to start the show?
Yes, I'll be delighted to. Welcome, Divya. I just wanted to ask you first up, what got you interested in this profession?
My interest was peaked right after high school when I was searching what program might be best to kind of go into, or what field. I always knew I had a passion for teaching, and I also had an interest in providing healthcare. So when I found out about the dietetics program, which is offered through the University of Alberta, it was almost like love at first sight, and I decided to go into this field, and I haven't regretted that ever since.
So you've been at it for a while. So our program today is focused around seniors, and I wanted to kick off by asking you, in terms of your field, what would you consider a healthy diet for seniors?
Yeah, so a healthy diet for those over the age of 65, it includes a variety of foods based on the Canada's Food Guide. The food guide was last updated in 2019, and it is a depiction of the balanced plate, which emphasizes vegetables. The balanced plate encourages that we fill half of our plate with non-starchy vegetables that can be cooked or uncooked, and filling about a quarter of our plate with healthy lean proteins, so things like skinless chicken, lower fat meat products, beans like black beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, tofu, nuts and seeds, as well as dairy products, and the remaining quarter of our plate filled with a whole grain. So as long as we're choosing 3 kind of balanced meals throughout the day, that helps to ensure that we're getting a sufficient amount of energy, of protein, vitamin minerals to meet our daily requirements.
So it's half of a plate of, you said, non-starchy vegetables. What's a which are the non-starchy and which are the starchy?
Great question. Yeah, so starchy vegetables would be those like potatoes, sweet potatoes, whereas a non-starchy vegetable could be broccoli, cauliflower, celery, tomatoes, a lot of the ones that have more roughage and require more chewing. That would be the more fibrous vegetables are the non-starchy ones.
What about like squash? Which category is that?
Yeah, squash would fall under the non-starchy.
Non-starchy?
Non-starchy, yeah.
Okay, and then it was a quarter of a plate of protein and a quarter of a plate of, what was the last quarter?
Whole grains.
Whole grains. Okay, great. Okay, so what are some of the important nutrients that older adults may not be getting enough of?
Yeah, another great question. So I want to highlight protein as being a big one here first. Protein needs do vary person to person. They depend on our current body weight, our current nutrition status, as well as our medical history. But as we age, our needs for protein generally do go up. A lot of people over the age of 60 might actually struggle with getting enough food in because of several factors like chewing issues or swallowing issues. Limited finances might be a barrier. So intake tends to go down as we age, whereas the needs go up. So it is important to be mindful of how much protein we're getting, aiming to have a protein-rich food at every meal. So that we're able to support our muscle strength, support our immune system, optimize our wound healing, as well as support our mood and our brain function. Because as we grow older, we do notice an increase in conditions like osteoporosis or sarcopenia, which can increase risk for falls and fractures, which can affect our ability to stay independent and functional. So that's
can I just ask you a question off of that?
Yeah.
Some seniors seem to cling to a vegetarian style diet. Would they meet their protein requirements if they have a vegetarian diet? Is it
that's
an
a
issue?
great point. It is possible to meet our protein needs just off of a vegetarian diet. It is a little bit more just a little bit more difficult. So it requires more planning and intention, being a bit more intentional about including a protein. So like I was saying earlier, some of the plant proteins include black beans, kidney beans, chickpeas.
Jana.
What's that?
Jana.
That's right. That's correct, Jana. So all of the legumes, they're rich in protein. Other sources are tofu, anything else that's soy-based, as well as nuts and seeds and dairy products. So dinner meal, I find majority of us are able to get enough protein. That's no problem. It's more so the lunch and the breakfast where we may not pay as much attention to getting enough protein. It might be, a soup, a small meal for lunch. So thinking about kind of ways to add protein, like I was saying, it's an easy add if you throw in some canned beans to a soup for lunch, throwing in some dairy and some nuts for breakfast. So as long as we're balancing them out, it's definitely possible to meet our protein needs.
So how much water does an older adult need per day?
I would like to go back just a little bit. There are a few more important nutrients that I wanted to highlight for senior adults who may not be getting enough of. And I'm glad Donna brought up the vegetarian diet question, because that can actually increase the risk for another deficiency. So vitamin B12 is one that is mostly found in animal products, and it is found that approximately 1/3 of adults are deficient or low in vitamin B12. So one of the main reasons for majority of us is because as we grow older, the production of acid in the stomach goes down, which can decrease how much vitamin B12 is absorbed. But then when we add in another factor like a vegetarian diet, or we add in a medication that can further decrease absorption of metformin or vitamin B12. I'm thinking metformin, that's one of the medications that can decrease that absorption. That, combined can increase risk for having a low B12, which is very important in helping our cognition. So looking for symptoms like anemia, looking for weakness, if someone complains of tingling feeling in their hands or feet, or kind of a numbness feeling, these can be signs of low vitamin B12. In addition to that, there are a couple other nutrients that are found to be low, one of them being vitamin D. We live, just because of where we live, we don't get enough sun here. And the months that we do have sun, we might be wearing sunscreen that blocks out some of those rays. And to make it even more challenging, our food supply is limited in vitamin D. We mainly get vitamin D from fish and milk. So it is advised that everyone from age of 0 to 100 do take a supplement of around 1,000 to 2,000 international units a day to help, help prevent falls, to strengthen the bones, to help reduce the risk of depression, and also just supporting immune function.
So for the vitamin D, you're suggesting, should I be taking a vitamin D capsule or can I get it through my food?
That's right. Yeah. So a vitamin D supplement of 1,000 to 2,000 international units is advised. It is quite difficult actually to try and get enough of that from food alone.
And then did I understand you also said vitamin B12 is an issue also?
That's right. Yeah, vitamin B12 is, again, like I was saying, absorption does go down with age. And a lot of people might be taking certain medications. For example, if you're taking a medication that decreases acid production in the stomach, that can increase risk of having a low B12 absorption.
So B12 I can get through diet, or I should also take a capsule?
That one, it's possible to get enough through diet for sure. It is mostly found in foods of animal origin though. So fish, meat, chicken, eggs, as well as dairy. So if someone is following a vegetarian diet, 2 cups of milk a day are sufficient to provide that need. We really only need about 2.4 micrograms of vitamin B12 from food, and it is possible to get enough from food. But say you're getting enough from food, but it's not being absorbed in the stomach, that will show up in the blood work. So if that's something that you're wanting to look into, sitting down with your healthcare team, whether it's your doctor or dietitian, they can help to assess to see if your vitamin B12 levels are going down or if they're normal.
And back to my water question, how much water?
Back to your water question. So that's actually another nutrient that a lot of us may not be getting enough of. The recommendation does vary person to person, again, based on our current body weight, what health conditions are present, what medications we're taking, activity level, and the amount of fluid we're losing. So a rough, kind of a rough estimate for someone, let's say, who weighs 154 pounds, and without excessive losses, they might need around 8 cups of fluid a day.
How many?
8 cups.
8 cups of fluid a day for somebody who weighs 150 pounds. Is that what you said?
154 pounds, that's right.
154 pounds.
So could I ask you a question on that? You said fluid, you didn't specify water.
That's
So could
right.
it be juice or could it be another liquid?
Ideally, we want to push for non-caffeinated and low sugar fluid. So what would fall under that is water. milk, as well as herbal teas or teas that are caffeine free. Because a lot of people struggle with getting enough fluid, we do kind of encourage fluid through other ways, like getting it through soup, getting it through smoothies, popsicles, maybe in the summer, sugar-free popsicles, or even with a little bit of sugar. Lattes, if you're gathering with friends, you kind of meet over for a latte, which is a milk-based drink. So yeah, any drink that does not contain caffeine and a high amount of sugar can help to meet that requirement.
What about 8 beers a day?
I would 8 beers a day.
The requirements.
I think you know the answer to that one, Earl.
So,
but that it might feel like it's a lot of fluid, 8 cups, especially when our thirst sensation goes down as we grow older. But it shouldn't be taken lightly, because dehydration is, a major concern for seniors. It can impact our blood pressure. It can decrease our mood if we're dehydrated. And it can also impact our ability to fight infections. So it is very important that we're staying kind of on top of maintaining our needs. And this, if you're kind of feeling signs of dehydration, something to look for might be if you're feeling weak, if you're feeling confused, or just lightheaded. Like, these can be some signs that you're not meeting your fluid requirements.
Another factor in there with old age is that my bladder size seems to have reduced drastically. So if I drink 8 glasses of fluid a day, I may just live in the bathroom, I'm afraid.
Yes, that's another barrier, right? That's another reason why our fluid intake might go down. It not only is our thirst sensation going down, but the frequent trips to the bathroom. But what I like saying to that is it's a sign that your kidneys are working well, and it's getting you to get up and move. That as we age, kind of that activity also does go down. But I do understand how challenging it is, especially when you're out and about and you don't know where the closest bathroom is going to be. One strategy that some people use is they will schedule all of their fluid before a certain hour in the day, when they know they're going to be close to a bathroom and they'll be able to easily access it. So say 5 o'clock at night, no fluid after 5 o'clock, especially if they wake up during the night, and that affects their sleep. But it really depends on where you're going to be during the day, what your kind of routine is like, and your lifestyle, to work around it. But that's definitely a big challenge.
So I just wanted to ask you, one of the things that may have impacted seniors in the last period is, budget constraints. As the world gets more expensive to live in, and the trend away from like pipe water to bottled water, and trying to find the right mix, with a tight budget. So I want to ask you about budget. How can we eat well and include reasonable water intakes on a tight budget? What are some healthy choices we can make, or what are some convenient foods that might work for our diets?
Yeah. Yes, prices are going up at a very rapid rate right now, and it feels almost impossible to eat healthy up in this environment. But some pre-planning of our meals for the next week or the next few days can really help. So one of the first steps that I would advise is when at home, to check to see what foods you already have in your pantry, in your fridge, and then using those ingredients to decide what your menu is going to be for the next week, and just kind of loosely jotting them down. And then basing, your grocery list off of the menu that you've created, that can really help to kind of streamline what you're going to be doing at the grocery store. Whatever ingredients you're missing, kind of jotting that down on the grocery list. And then once you're at the grocery store, kind of always keeping an eye out for some deals. If you're buying fresh fruits or vegetables, there's always a rack kind of in the produce section that has some markdown products, which may have 2 to 3 days of life in them still. So you could consider having those be used up within the first few days of your plan, and then for the rest of the week, relying on the frozen vegetables or canned vegetables. If we buy frozen, A, they're not going to go bad as quickly. B, we can buy a larger bag of it, which tends to have a lower per unit price. So that gives us some of that cost saving. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, the plant proteins like our black beans, navy beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, they all come pre-cooked in cans. So that's a really convenient way of adding protein, and that could be, one route to take. But if we purchase the dried versions, like the dry beans in bags, they tend to be cheaper compared to the canned version of it, and they make great additions to a soup, to a salad, if you're making wraps. And once you boil them, say you have a crock pot, you can boil a larger batch at one time, leave it in the fridge, and then you can add that over your meals to different recipes. So you've only bought one product, but you're really able to use it, repurpose it into different recipes. And a lot of these do tend to be cheaper compared to like buying meat, as meat even, meat prices right now are pretty high as well. So not being afraid of frozen or canned goods, they are just as healthy as fresh versions. But yeah, just something to look out for though is that you want to read the label of these packaged goods to check for sodium, for sugar, and for fat. And ideally we want to buy plain versions of the vegetables and the beans, and not those that have prepared sauces added fat or sugar.
Oh, you mentioned something that occurred to me just now, that sometimes in the labeling, they may describe sugar in about 10 different forms, that, so then you think, but this means sugar. They'll say added sucrose, and then they'll use a different dextrose, and then they'll add something else, and then syrup, and then you say, but wait a minute, all those are sugars, so is this too much sugar for one person, kind of thing? Because so I guess label reading is something that's key that we should pay attention to as seniors, you're saying?
Yeah, and label reading is something that you may just need to do once or twice for a particular product, and once you know what's in the product, then the next time you can kind of blindly choose it. But yeah, that first time it is important to read what's on it. So there's two components to reading a label. There is the table, and then there's the list, the ingredients list. The ingredients list will list all of the ingredients that are in that product by listing the heaviest thing first, and then as it goes down, it's the smallest item will be listed at the very end. But on the table, the nutrition table, it'll clump all of that sugar that you mentioned and will give you a simple gram. So all of that combined sugar in the different words and the different names, what is the total amount, and we can base our choice on that gram of sugar listed on the table. And you can kind of give yourself, a limit. I'm only going to purchase products that have less than 5 grams of sugar or less than 10 grams of sugar, and you can kind of use that as a rule when picking up products. If you're interested in kind of getting specific amount of sugar, that might be a good target to aim for. That's where a kind of a one-on-one session with a registered dietitian can kind of be really helpful, because then they can kind of look through the medical history and really get down to what that number should be.
Where do we go for reliable information when we can't call Divya? There's so much in social media, and I don't know if what's true and what's somebody just selling me a product.
So there, I mean, there's, you know, more of me. As I mentioned, earlier, I am from the Edmonton Southside Primary Care Network. So there are several primary care networks like that within the city, and each network has registered dietitians on their team that go into clinics. So if anyone wants to speak with a dietitian one-on-one, they should have access to a dietitian through their family doctor's clinic. They can be either referred out, or the dietitian probably comes into the clinic. So that's one option. There are also several workshops that the PCNs offer. So the options, you know, are for like label reading is another kind of workshop on its own. Meal planning is a workshop that's offered, as well as diabetes or just health basics. There's several options for workshops that are offered throughout Edmonton. So if you know someone is interested in finding out more information about that, they can again ask their clinic, or even visit Edmonton Southside PCN.ca and look for virtual workshops, and it'll give you a list of all of the workshops available.
That's great.
Yes, that's good knowledge to have. Is that a walking facility where you are? Or it's based on referrals from your doctor only?
It depends. So if, say, your clinic has an in-house dietitian, meaning the dietitian comes into the clinic every so often, you can walk in and book yourself into seeing them. But if the dietitian is working centrally, meaning from the head office of the primary care network, that would require a referral.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, did you? I think we've covered our prepared questions. Anything else you want to be sure that we know, Divya or Donna? Do you have any last question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our community, the people, immigrants who come from other places, and they may have some additional food values or cultural values that we haven't considered. I know chana features regularly in my diet, and I do all kinds of things with it, but I may not be alone in this, or other communities may have different cultural needs that have to be met. And so their diets may be impacted by what is culturally appropriate for them. So I'm just wondering if you have any guidance for seniors like that who they're aging, they're on fixed incomes, and they have to meet dietary restrictions based on their heritage or culture or what other limitations they have. So I'm just wondering if you've thought of that, or if you have any guidelines you can offer, you know?
Yeah, so it is very much possible to follow a balanced diet. So that balanced plate that I was referring to at the beginning, even based on our cultural foods or our traditional ethnic foods. So if you visit canadasfoodguide.ca, there are in fact versions available in different languages as well. But if there are any specific foods that you're kind of unsure about, I eat this dish that's made with this root, or, I hear a lot of like traditional recipes that use a mixture of different components. And so we're not quite sure after it's mixed, where does that fall? That one-on-one can be really useful in really analyzing that recipe and helping to figure out, would that be considered a protein-rich food? Would that be more of a whole grain? And how can we make it healthier by improving the quality of fats that are added, and by maybe altering the amount of sodium or sugar that's added to the recipe. So that's more kind of that intricate work that can be done one-on-one with a dietitian, but it's possible.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This has been great.
Yeah,
Thank
you know,
Did you have anything else you wanted to share with us?
yes, I was thinking about that comment you had brought up, Earl, about the frequent trips to the bathroom, and I just wanted to add there, if there are certain foods that can help kind of reduce that. So that was something I had referred to earlier with the caffeine, right? So that's one of the reasons we want to limit how much caffeine we're getting, because that can increase our frequency to the bathroom. And also vitamin C has also been shown to help with that. So again, going back to the variety of fruits and vegetables in our diet to meet enough of these micronutrients so that we're able to kind of fight symptoms like that.
Another thing that to me impacts that as well is ginger, the use of ginger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it stimulates frequent trips because it's a diuretic that releases a lot of fluid. So I have to be careful when I use ginger to use it earlier in the day rather than later in the evening, because then I have to be running to the bathroom. So I'm just speaking from experience,
Okay, I've learned something new
Yes,
today.
that the
thank you for
diuretics.
that.
Vitamin C might reduce my need to go. Is that what you're saying?
It can help, yeah.
It can help.
So suck more oranges or whatever.
Yeah, so one orange would provide around 75 to 80 milligrams of vitamin C, yeah. And that's pretty close to what we would need in a day.
Oh, okay, good.
Well, this has been great. Thank you very much. I think it's certainly useful to me, and I hope it's useful to our audience. I'm sure it will be useful to our audience as well.
I hope so too. Thank you for this opportunity. I think this is a great project.